Hello, my darlings. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all good. And thank you for coming to this rather impromptu uh, live stream. I was planning to do this a little bit later. Unfortunately, I mixed up my time zones and my timing. So, how's everyone? I hope you all had a wonderful festive season. You guys are all ready to start 21 with a bang, and I am starting 21 with a bang because I managed to get an interview with a chap who's from the MGTOW manosphere called Neroke number 5, or as he's otherwise known as on Twitter, Red Pill Nation. He is the host of the podcast Red Pill Nation Hangout, and I would like you to introduce to you. Sorry about this. Just bear with me 1 second. I just realized here we go. I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Neroke. Hello, Neroke. How are you, sir?
Good. Glad to be on the show. Hopefully this will help answer a few questions.
Exactly. Okay, for those of the audience who don't know who you are, could you just give us a little intro into who you are, how you started your channel, and just generally, some general information about how you got into the manosphere and MGTOW?
Okay. Well, some people have just one event that gets them, usually a divorce or something like that. In my case, I was.
Oh, sorry.
All right, the channel got started in 2017, and I had already been active on WordPress for a couple of years at that point, and it was just I went to a fairly well-known and prestigious film school, so I was in film and television, and going over to YouTube and starting there felt like the natural progression from doing the WordPress blog. I kind of went. It was a breakup the year before that got me initially into it, but I kind of went back and forth until I finally found somebody to partner up with at near the end of 2017, and yeah, we just said hell, let's just do it, and we just started doing it. We started doing it once a week, and we've been doing it more or less once a week ever since. The independent content, I decided to start adding that in mostly over the last year. There's a whole pile of it sitting on my hard drive right now, and of course I did the MGTOW Master Series with Nihilist. That was his idea, and there's a lot of, specifically the first few, we talk about where you can go to access information about MGTOW and some of the really basic things that people need to know about it. In the MGTOW Masters, I'm going to be doing another one with Rierson later on, which is going to be more like where do you, for MGTOW who's just discovering the manosphere in general, and where to go to get information on what to do. Because I mean, the backstory for me on MGTOW was. It's kind of long-winded. I will break it down. I'll try to compress it as best I can here.
Just before you get into that, let me just explain for those of you who don't know MGTOW, just in case if there's someone who just came out of a desert island. MGTOW means men going their own way. This is generally a group of men who am I correct by saying, who've basically washed their hands of interactions or generally settling down with a woman? Would that be accurate?
That pretty much that would be the first and foremost thing. It's a marriage boycott. When I say it's a marriage boycott, it's not a sex boycott. It's not a relationship boycott. It's don't put yourself in a position where a woman can essentially have access to your resources. Marriage is, and I mean, I know a lot of people won't like hearing this, but marriage is effectively a legal contract. And when you sign that legal contract, and there's really no easy way to say this in the West. Once you have signed that marriage contract, and once you have said "I do," you are effectively at her whim. And you're also effectively at the whim of the state. The state can and it gets even worse if you have kids. And my backstory is that I saw this happen, saw something like this. My ex sister in law got custody of the kids in my brother's divorce. She tried to put the kids up for adoption without telling my brother.
Wow.
My brother got the kids back. They went to court to fight for custody, and the judge gave the kids back to my ex-sister-in-law. Now, if that sounds extreme, it happens all the time. I have an interview on DDJ's Inferno where DDJ talks about having the same thing happen to him, except in his particular case, he was having to turn his daughter over to his ex, who was at the time currently living with a pedophile who spent the next 4 to 5 years literally molesting his daughter every day.
Oh, wow. That's
that's so, yeah, I mean, that's an extreme example of what can happen, but stuff like that happens all the time. The people who say, well, you can just go to the courts, it's like, well, first of all, one, you need the physical, mental, emotional, and financial resources to fight in court. And yeah, there's it was done for the United States. There's this documentary called Divorce Corp, which goes into how corrupt the family courts are in the United States. Canada and Britain are not quite as bad, but they're still pretty bad. And I can go into some examples of some stuff that's happened in Britain. If you think that if this somehow isn't happening over in Great Britain, I've got some examples for you of instances where
sure
it's happened there.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I've seen myself reports of a lot of issues with divorce courts and men being fleeced. But I mean, in a way, you could say that's what got me into the manosphere a little bit and interested. But generally, I've been interested in that sort of stuff for a while because I've. I started with the pickup artists in the sort of crew, and
that's where I got started as well, believe it or not.
Yeah, I see. And then it sort of led me down some paths, and I realized, really what it really came down to a lot of times was a value situation. I think men undersell themselves all the time and women oversell themselves. And it's like the man has to constantly appeal to it's like, admittedly, it is the way of the world. It's the way of nature. The male is the one that has the male, what do you call it? What was that bird? Thingy. Oh my God. The one with the great tail. Big.
Oh, the peacock.
The peacock, exactly. My God, the name just escaped me. The male peacock is the one that has the large plumage and a display, and it's the female that's brown and ugly. But it's the male that is trying to get the female. So there is an uneven ratio, if you like, in generally, where the man is the one who's constantly having to chase the woman. That's in nature, and that's obviously in human beings. So there is always an imbalance between the male and female, and females do have a monopoly on childbirth. We can't.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Now, yeah.
Well, for now, exactly. I've also spoken and seen things about artificial wombs and other things, and I think the dynamic between male and female will shift dramatically when such technology becomes available. So I have to say that is going to be an interesting dynamic, or it'll be interesting to see. Well, we may not even be alive to see it, but it would be interesting to see if the male-female dynamics change when such things become available. But for now, you were saying, in the UK and all the sort of male, the sort of court system and the general society is effectively against men. I don't know. Is that really?
I could go. Let's start. My personal experience revolved around false accusations, and just picking the wrong woman for relationships. That's my beginning. But if you want to begin where a lot of MGTOW, a lot of big guys discover MGTOW, it's through the corrupt family courts. They either have it happen to them or they see it happen to a male relative of theirs. The I believe actually I'm pretty sure it's this way in Britain too. The family courts do not have a jury system. It is strictly up to the judges. That means that for one, a judge with an agenda can really ruin things for a lot of people, and two, and then we get into corrupt governmental structures. The whole governmental structure, especially around child support, and you don't have alimony, but specifically child support payments in Britain, because they don't have alimony in Britain, as far as I know. The woman, it's effectively designed at this point in time to use the male as essentially as a cash cow. Now there's been a few changes that have been made to it, but I mean that's one area. The second area where a lot of men discover MGTOW is via false accusations, be it accusations of stalking or sexual harassment, or worse, false rape. And having your name literally get dragged through the mud, even though you're innocent. And you had a case that just took place in Britain here very recently. That's a classic example, the Amber Heard Johnny Depp situation.
That's right.
Very little or no consequences to the woman for doing it.
I will caveat that Disney, I think, did throw her out of the next Aquaman movie for that situation.
Oh, actually, that would be Warner Brothers. I haven't heard about that. About that?
Sorry, yeah, Warner Brothers. Yeah.
Yeah, Warner Brothers was caught between a rock and a hard place there because they had the Pirates of the Caribbean. Oh no, it was the Fierce Creatures franchise and Aquaman at the same time. So Warner Brothers couldn't really do anything until after this lawsuit with the Sun was resolved. Now, the thing about that particular lawsuit, and something a lot of people probably don't know about what happened during that lawsuit, was that the judge was compromised. The judge's son worked for the guy who wrote the article that caused Johnny Depp to go with the lawsuit in the first place, and the judge's wife had attended at least one event of which Amber Heard was present.
Yeah.
So, the judge in that particular case was completely and utterly compromised. And when the guilty came down, even though it was a libel case and not an actual person-to-person lawsuit, like the one that's going to be taking place later on this year in Virginia, for instance, Netflix just took all of Johnny Depp's movies off their site, but they kept Cuties up. Yeah. Just let that sink in.
Yes. Yeah, that's why Netflix is known as Nunsflix at the moment in Britain.
Yeah, they're effectively trying to unperson Johnny Depp at this point, and they're doing everything they can to avoid mentioning the personal lawsuit that's going to be taking place in Virginia or any of the issues around that. And that's not going to be like the libel case. Libel's a hard one to sell, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is, didn't everyone become sympathetic towards Johnny Depp? Didn't the whole thing turn against Amber Heard and towards Johnny now?
It did. The only issue is that it doesn't matter what the public perception is. It's what the Hollywood media and the mainstream media, the narrative that they want to play. And
so the media are still punishing Johnny Depp, even though the tapes came out and Amber Heard was saying on the tapes, "Oh, you're a pussy and no one will believe you." You. Even after that, the companies are still going ahead and
like Warner Brothers kicked Johnny Depp off Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh no, that's Disney. Disney.
Disney kicked. Warner Brothers removed him from the Fierce Creatures franchise like 36 hours after that verdict came down.
Okay, that was the Fierce, because this is what I understand is Amber Heard got is it Amber Heard? Yeah, she got kicked off the Aquaman movie by Warner Brothers because of
No,
her
she
behavior.
didn't. As far as I know, she's still on.
She's still on
There
that.
hasn't been an official announcement. There hasn't been enough. There's a petition with 1.5 million signatures, I think, that asking to have her removed.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
And she has also tried to claim that most of those signatures are bots. I am not kidding you on that one.
Well,
Yellow Flash and the Quartering have done extensive coverage of the Heard case.
I'm with you. Yeah, that's what I think. I think it was the Quartering is where I heard it from.
Yeah, Yellow Flash has done the best coverage of the Heard situation. If you want to find somebody who has,
I don't know about that gentleman, so I'll look him up. But okay, let's shift back to yeah. I mean, those are good examples of this sort of situation where a woman can say just about anything, and the world will turn on the man immediately. And admittedly, historically, there are some good reasons for that, because historically men
absolutely
have been
there is,
like absolute bastards to women and beat the crap out of them. And by the way, I'm from the Middle East. I'm originally Iranian, raised in Britain, and I can categorically
So you know about a patriarchal society then.
Exactly. I have no qualms about or delusions about what kind of patriarchal societies can be, and how women can be treated, in those societies. Don't get me wrong.
There's an interesting segue on that, which we'll get back to, by the way, about the Middle Eastern MGTOW.
There's Middle Eastern MGTOWs?
Yeah, MGTOW is actually, this was a bit of a shocker to me. MGTOW is actually thriving in the Middle East. And I was like, what? And then I had to kind of like take a step back and look, because it's also in China.
Well, I mean, China, they have a big discrepancy between men and women now because of the single single child per household rule for a long time. So now they have a massive gap between men and women. There's more men than there are women, so they have a female shortage.
Yeah, so that's not so much of a surprise there, but I mean, I was like, it's in Africa, it's in South America, like it's gone beyond just the West. Now, I had to scratch my head when I found this out, because apparently not so much in Iran, but in Egypt, like there's a thriving MGTOW community. That didn't make sense to me at first, and I had to go like, what the hell would cause it? And then I like realized that it's sort of like the ongoing theme, regardless of whether it's China or whether it's Indonesia or whether it's the West or whether it's South America, the issue stems, or specifically Japan. There's a version of Japan. They're known as the grass eaters, or
That's
like
right.
Hikimori.
That's right. I've seen those.
The issue is that men are getting tired or sick and tired of being treated like tools of the state, or in the case of Iran, being treated like for tools of the church, the religion.
I see.
There's a I mean, I couldn't figure it out at first, and it was sort of like, well, yeah, I mean, the religious repression that's happening in the Middle East doesn't just affect the women. I mean, the men are being affected by it too. I mean, I've heard story after story after story of gay men fleeing Iran in the middle of the night.
Well, gay men, of course, but I mean, I didn't really. I mean, I thought the gay male situation is somewhat apart from MGTOW.
Oh, it is. It is. I was just using that as an example of males chafing under a repressive system, right?
Yes.
Like, I mean, the theistic. I use theistic religious oppression that happens in the Middle East affects men as well.
Yes.
It affects them differently, but it still affects them, and it can still be really restrictive, and it still puts a lot of it effectively, the people at the top treat the men below them like they're basically cattle to be used at their whim. Yes. That seems to be the ongoing theme, regardless of the society that you're in. Guys are just getting sick and tired of being used. In Japan, for instance, it's the corporate mindset and the corporate culture that you're just a cog in a machine. In the West, it's about divorce and false accusations and alimony and etc. The issues behind it vary from region to region, but what it all boils down to is that the people in power, the state, view the men in their country as disposable utilities.
Yeah, the ATMs
And
to women and taxpayers to the government.
yeah, effectively. And that seems to be the overwhelming thing. But I mean, specifically around the West, it revolves around, you know, corrupt courts, stacked marriage laws, false accusations,
Sure.
paternity fraud. I could go on and
Now,
on and
I have
on
to
and on
stress,
and
for
on.
the sake of the usual blurb on the internet, hashtag not all women,
Oh, oh, oh.
just in case.
I think I should throw a caveat in there, and this is something that a lot of people seem to not get, and this is going to be one of those things I think people are going to need to hear. Even if you find the right woman, it doesn't even necessarily have to be the woman that initiates it. I've met guys who had relatively amicable separations and divorces, even with kids, until a lawyer got involved, or a government official got involved, or a relative got involved. So this is not just the women itself. I mean, women have always been women. This is not just, I mean, so yeah, that whole tradcon argument, and this is the thing that we're going to get, because you talked to me about, like the nationalists, right? The tradcon argument is that if you just find the right woman that do those things, that your life is going to be hunky-dory. And it's sort of like, well, no, the laws are still in place.
So the system is still against you, even if you find that unicorn woman.
Even if you find the unicorn, the woman, the laws are still against you, and it doesn't even necessarily have to come from her, right? Like, that's something that, well, I mean, you were telling me about the ultra nationalist crowd. That's the fact that the ultra nationalist crowd seems to overlook.
I see. Yeah, that's right. I mean, actually, I want to get into that eventually, but I'm sorry we kind of diverted from your path, or your sort of
Okay, yeah, all right, yeah.
move towards the red pills and manosphere sort of stuff. So
Okay,
what
all right.
transpired, or what sequence of events happened when you then started your
Okay,
your channel?
the straw that broke the camel's back was
Yeah.
2013. I was involved. I was in the atheist community, and there was a group that started up in the atheist community called Atheism Plus. And what they did is they went into all the chat boards, into all the groups and whatever, and they effectively, and this should sound familiar to a lot of your listeners, basically demanded complete and total obedience to the cult of social justice. Now, what ended up happening in the atheist community is that you had skeptics and people like me going, no, wait, okay, if it comes from a politician or if it comes from a preacher, we take out the scalpels. But if it comes from a feminist, we're just supposed to accept the dogma without question. And it's like, I ain't doing that. And I had to go, because I had done something called the Sterling Institute of Relationship back in the 90s. So I was sort of like a lurker at that point. But I had to start going to, like, these guys would just like go off on these tangents, and I would have to go to get information to deal with these people. I had to go to the men's sites, specifically the men's rights sites on Facebook, to get the information to deal with these individuals. And as I gradually started doing it, I stumbled into a book written by a woman named Helen Smith called Men on Strike.
Okay.
If you're gonna get information about MGTOW, that would probably, I mean, I find it rather ironic that the two I would call landmark books for MGTOW were both written by women, because there's another one called The Predatory Female, written by Esther Vilar, also written by a woman. But I got the book by Helen Smith, and I was like reading it, and when I was finished, because like up to that point, I was like, because I mean, something just seemed off about the institution of marriage, which is why I had avoided it, but I hadn't discussed it, but I thought there maybe was something wrong with me. And that Helen Smith's book, Men on Strike, and it was sort of like, no, I'm not the only one who feels this way. And then I started, and
Interesting.
because she was going with this thing called going galt, and when I started doing some research into it, it's like, no, well, going galt isn't the term you're looking for. What you're looking for is MGTOW.
I see.
And this is, by the way, this is even before, this is pre Sandman that I discovered this, by the way. Like Sandman, I don't even think Sandman even had his channel up at that point.
Let me
And
just,
I
for
was
the
like,
audience that doesn't know, Sandman is another MGTOW channel with I mean, amongst a lot of the other MGTOW channels. I've myself followed Sandman, and then a Human. I don't know if you follow
oh
Human.
yeah, human did a really good interview with Spetsnaz last year, which I would also encourage you to listen to.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, and then I started looking into it, and it was like, oh, so I'm not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what got me started. And then I went through a particularly nasty breakup in a relationship. No kids involved, or no marriage or kids, but it was a particularly nasty breakup in 2016. And I was incredibly upset about it. And one day I was just walking down the, it was literally, I was walking down the street, and the thought occurred to me. It's sort of like, well, I could choose to stay pissed off and angry about the situation, be a perpetual victim, or I can actually, because I mean, I had the film background, and I already had the blog up at that point. I could
Okay.
I could take it to the next step, and I could start doing YouTube content, and I decided, I actually made a vow to myself that 5 years down the road, the thing I would be talking about would be my channel and not the breakup. And that's exactly what's happened.
That's good. That's actually very positive how you handle that. Now, the funny thing is, for me, I never I've never had a bad breakup. I've never really even been in a bad relationship where a woman has like abused or taken advantage of me. At least not that I think so. I don't feel taken advantage of. But I've always been uncomfortable with the female male dynamics and the hypocrisy of 21st century or 20th century ideas of feminism, because even though the feminists want to be independent and I make my own money and I'll have a job that pays as much as a man, and yet, you know, I found that to be incredibly hypocritical, because that feminist attitude only stops at the point of when the date begins. So at the beginning of the date, they want their doors still open for them. They still want the man
Yeah.
to pay for the dinner, for the nights out, for this, for that. So all of those things, all the feminism goes out the window when it comes to that part. There is no feminism in that sphere. It's only in the sphere of employment and work and earning the same
Yeah,
amount of
access
money
to male
and
resources, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
but when it comes to relationship, interpersonal relationships, suddenly they're from the 1940s and 50s, or they're like, you know, Miss Scarlet from what's it called, that old movie,
Gone
Gone with the Wind. Yeah.
with the wind.
They're suddenly, you know, all about
Oh,
that.
just a little bit of a sidebar here. Gone with the Wind made the equivalent of four would have made the equivalent of $4 billion in today's money. I
Wow.
actually looked that up one time. That would to give you an idea of how famous Gone with the Wind was at the time. Yeah, that's the issue. It's and that's that's the issue about MGTOW. Rollo Tomasi, who by the way is not a MGTOW, he's more of a red pill PUA kind of guy.
Hmm.
He wrote an interesting book, and one of the things that he wrote in his he's got these 10 points. He did an interview where he summed up the 10 points. One of his 10 points is that a woman doesn't love a man for the same reason that a man loves a woman. A woman feels loved unconditionally when all of her needs are taken care of, or when you make her feel safe. You know,
Hmm.
part of that safety ties into the kind of mental, emotional, and physical resource. So basically, you know, the man has to give part of himself over to the woman to make the woman feel safe, right? Uh, the issue is that access to male resources now is backed up by a corrupt governmental and law court system, which effectively, once a man gets married, effectively leaves him completely and utterly at the whim of the woman and the state. And that includes, by the way, reproductive choices.
Yes, yes, that is something. That's what I mean. These are the little subtle hypocrisies. When it comes to women choosing to have abortions, it's my body, my choice. When it comes to a woman wanting to have the child, the man has no say and yet has to commit to an 18 years serfdom, effectively, to pay for this child.
Oh yeah, you're effectively an indentured servant. And I mean, I mean, the hardcore, again, I don't want to start chafing on the hardcore nationalists here, but I mean, like, that's something that a lot of them don't want to acknowledge. Actually, even though, I mean, the left is completely dismissive of masculinity in general. Here's the ironic part about feminists. Now, you would figure that of all the areas of the manosphere, that they would probably be more pissed off at the pickup artist community, because I mean, there's that whole thing about viewing women as sex objects and whatever. Mm-hmm. But I mean, the anger and the hostility seems to be directed. A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. Well, starting in 2006, the bicycles. I sum up MGTOW this way: the bicycles just started saying, "Okay, we're out of here, bye," and you would figure, and the women, feminists in particular, I mean, it brings out almost a visceral, hostile reaction, and I have a pretty good idea why. But in order to address the issues that are causing MGTOW, would require reflection. I don't think you'd see feminists do it. You might see women in general do this, but I mean, it would require humility and reflection on most feminists that I don't think they have. And I don't think society at this point has the capacity to admit, because they would have to admit to a lot of corruption and imbalance in a lot of areas. And and until, like, I mean, if best place I can go is, I mean, although I did a video on Wikipedia and the MGTOW article, but there is a list of topics in the men's rights Wikipedia. Now, go to the Wikipedia site, look at the topics that men's rights are discussing, and there's a long list there. Now, each and every one of those topics contributes to the growth of MGTOW in some form or fashion.
Interesting.
And, a bottom line is that a guy is not, especially a smart guy who's looked at the facts, is not going to take a look at what's going on and seeing, and again, right, that whole thing with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp is like, stand there and point. There's a couple of other examples that I could use in Britain of that as well. A guy's looking at that situation and going, either he experiences it firsthand or he sees it happen to some other guy, or some rare individuals figure it out on their own. They look at that and they go, yeah, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, why do you think you were saying, why is it that women have such a visceral reaction to MGTOW? I mean, I can understand if they have a visceral reaction to PUAs or to men's rights activists, but MGTOW's essentially the core thing is, we are going to leave you alone, women. We don't want to interact with you. We don't want to marry you. We don't want to have anything to do with you. We are simply going to pull ourselves out of this cycle of marriage and divorce. Why are the feminists, who by their rhetoric are these fiercely independent women, that girls can go get it by themselves, sisters are doing it for themselves, so if you're doing all of this, then what's your problem with the MGTOWs? The MGTOWs are simply walking away from what would be considered a traditional male role in society, and you guys hate the traditional male role. Well, so it's a win-win, isn't it?
Yeah, you would figure that would be the case. Well, with feminists in particular, but even with a lot of women in general, feminism stopped being about equality decades ago. I think we can both agree on that. The aim here is with a lot of and they will deny this, but I mean actions don't back up their words. And let's not even go down that rabbit hole for right now. The whole situation is that it's about making men subservient to women, and you know, when a guy decides to go his own way, especially after he's been through the red pill rage, women have always had, at least when back when we were in the hunter gatherer days, and actually even up to about 50 or 60 years ago, women had the ability to effectively socially censor you from the group. They could basically cut you off from reproductive rights. They could ostracize you from the group and whatever. And any guy that defied that order ran the risk of not reproducing or anything like that. So basically, that was their thing. And what MGTOW have gone and done, and we can do it in this society, is that threats of social ostracization or threats of you're not going to be able to have kids or you're not going to have sex if you choose to go your own way, those threats have almost no impact on me. I mean, I've had women come up say on this, it's like, oh, well, I will never sleep with you and neither will any of my friends. And it's sort of like, you don't get it, do you? We're past that point with me. We're well past that point with me. It's not about being gay, because I mean, I've still got my PUA skills. I'm still sexually active. I am just extremely careful about how I apply it now.
Yeah.
It's and then they basically have lost the ability to control these men with the one, basically, pardon the language here, the pussy pass, so to speak, right? The next step and we've all had this happen where we've just basically told a woman to get lost when she starts freaking out and she gets her boyfriend or her husband or her brothers or whatever to try to get you back in line. And that's where a lot of the visceral male response comes, because I mean, and this goes, and ironically enough, another book written by a woman, Julia Cameron, and she gets into the blocked artist, and it's like you get that visceral, fearful reaction, because if this guy is able to go independent, then that means that, and this guy's not choosing not to stay in his place, that becomes a visceral threat to their status and their position and their loss of power, because you just don't know what that guy's going to do. And I mean, especially once they've gone through the red pill rage like I have, like having some toys and having some money is fun, and it's kind of interesting, but it's not the be all end all. Having status is also, it's like, okay, I've got status, but it's sort of like, what's the point of having status in a society as corrupt as this one?
Okay, so you're not.
Right? I mean, it's just so yeah. It's like it's defying a fundamental rule that women have set out, and it's like it's basically going, "Oh no, I don't need that. I don't require that to make my life work." And it's like, it effectively leaves a woman, most women, in particular feminists, with literally no other option. Right? It's sort of like, well, if you can't if you can't use the pussy to get the guy back in line, well, what the hell are you going to do? Right? And when you get to that point, it's like you resort to anger.
It's usually the ace in the hole for most women is the vagina. And if that doesn't work, then their big secret weapon is
effectively gone. So not. Again, right, there's a process that most MGTOW have to go through called the red pill rage. It's when they get through to the other side, that's when it really stops working.
Yeah, I have noticed the Angry MGTOW situation. There's literally a YouTube channel called Angry MGTOW.
Oh, don't even get me started about that guy. I He's not in the he's been affected. I mean, keep in mind there is no fellowship of MGTOW. It's a very loose coalition of men with very little in common other than, a marriage boycott, no women in MGTOW, and not necessarily and anti-gynocentrism. Very little. There's very little in common that tie all MGTOW together. But I mean, Angry MGTOW managed to pretty much get himself almost like I never liked Angry MGTOW.
Yeah, I stopped following him years ago. I just saw him when he came up through YouTube, and he was, on the usual sort of channels like Bearing and a few other channels he managed to get himself on. Back in that Gamergate sort of sphere of time, where Gamergate was pretty big, and he managed to. He was very clever. He managed to get himself on all the big channels and managed to promote himself quite well by attacking a variety of sort of anti-SJW channels, but afterwards he just went into this really it was just terrible. His shows, his commentary, his ideas, it was just boring.
Oh, well, I mean, the one that did it for me was Shoe on Head as a feminist, and I was like, what? Like, I mean,
well, I mean, to be
Shoe on Head is not a feminist,
but
right?
hold on like, there. Since then, Shoe on Head has become considerably liberal. And sort of,
well, she always was. I got to point out that I'm also left of center. Shoe on Head was also like left of center. I mean, she admitted. I've been following Shoe on Head for several years.
Yeah,
she was always left of center, right? One of the other things we have to start throwing out right now when it comes to what is going on here is the whole left-right political paradigm. Because Sargon of Akkad is, well, I mean, I think he's a centrist now, but I mean, he initially started out left of center. Black Pigeon Speaks, when he did his political compass, he actually came out, and I think you'll find this interesting. He was on the verge of being a social democrat, right? Tim Pool is there. Yeah, a lot of people in the intellectual dark web, Jordan Peterson, Tim Pool, Brett Weinstein, are like hard left guys. But this isn't really I'm center left myself, right?
Do you consider Tim Pool to be further left than Shoe on Head?
Oh yeah, he's definitely further left than Shoe on Head. Tim Pool's done a couple political compasses. He's really hard libertarian, but yeah, he's like left wing.
It's just I've seen some stuff about Shoe on Head and her attacking certain what I would consider to be centrist, center right, maybe people. And
really, I haven't really followed Shoe on Head. She's after she broke up with Armored Skeptic, her content dropped off considerably.
I see. Well, that's what I mean. So if you actually see her content now, because I still follow her, I still see some of her stuff. I mean, this is the weird thing. She flips. Sometimes she's attacking the whole crazy feminist. She does attack the crazy left, but I think she is. I think at this stage, I would put her further left than Tim Pool, because Tim Pool was advocating voting for Trump. He started to pick up some really right wing. He went and bought a gun, and he started to really go down that conservative sort of road.
Oh yeah, well, Tim Pool. Well, I mean, you need to understand. At one point, somebody actually, when Tim Pool was living outside Philadelphia, like somebody came up and started, like, people started showing up at Tim's door.
Exactly.
And right in the middle of, I saw that video right in the middle of a show. Somebody started knocking on his door at like 2:00 in the morning, and he claimed that he had some important details that he wanted to tell Tim about. It's like, really? Like, you couldn't wait until the morning to do it, or you couldn't wait till the afternoon? you had to show up in the middle of the night.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, no,
So yeah.
yeah, some of that became. But anyway, let's not veer. Now, this one thing I wanted to actually ask you, because it was very interesting how you all the books you've quoted are, most of them, in fact, I think nearly all of them are written by women, and yet for me, I was expecting you to mention people like what's his name, Paul Elam or Peter Lloyd.
Oh, yeah. Those guys are still good authors and so forth. And I mean, Paul Elam is a guy I follow on a regular basis.
Yeah.
It's just it's one of those really strange little dichotomies of, like, I mean, yeah, like the two signature books that most MGTOW will quote have both been written by women. There are certainly guys in MGTOW who are, because given the highly individualistic nature of MGTOW, are like are actual hardcore misogynists. I mean, I'm like feminist. I will freely admit that those individuals are in MGTOW. I think the aim at this point is to make sure that those guys. Well, I don't think anybody's ever going to be running MGTOW, but just to make sure that those guys don't bully the regular individuals into conforming to their belief system. It's like, I mean, MGTOW does have sex in it at this point. I mean, Angry MGTOW was one of them. I mean, I remember so, if this is something, because I mean, when I got involved in the men's rights movement, there was a big issue with the men's rights movement back in 2013, 2014, because what happened due to atheism plus was that a whole bunch of left of center people suddenly got involved in the manosphere. And there was a huge issue because, I mean, a lot of people wanted the men's rights movement to be politically pure, as in it just wanted it to be straight conservative.
I see.
And it had to be pointed out to this crowd that, the issues affecting men affect men regardless of their political opinion. And there's an example of a university professor in British Columbia who I think he almost lost tenure over a false accusation. This was like 2013, 2014. Oh, well, there's a professor in Britain. I mean, he made a speech in South Korea, and black female professor at the same conference got him, almost ended up ending his career as well.
That's right. Yeah, he made a comment about women in STEM programs, and that why women don't really do as well, or there isn't as many women in STEM as there are men. And that comment, I forgot exactly what the comment was.
I can't remember what it was, but it was a few years ago.
Yeah,
it wasn't even. It was an observation. It wasn't even a particularly innocuous comment, but I mean, it almost destroyed his. And this guy was a Nobel Prize winner too, by the way, I believe. Right. And it almost destroyed his career. I mean, he ended up having to sell his house, I believe, at one point. But I mean, yeah. There's also that guy at at the European Space Agency, when they managed to land that probe on that asteroid.
Yes, and the shirt he wore.
And the shirt, so it's like, and you have incidents like that happening.
Yeah, this is the article. It's Tim Hunt was the Nobel laureate. Tim Hunt resigns after trouble with girls comments. So they pretty much destroyed his professional career because he made a comment. It says UCL professor steps down after saying he was in favor of single-sex labs because girls fall in love with men, and when you criticize them, they cry. Oh, damn!
Oh, here's the thing, though. They do.
Well, yeah,
they do.
It's true.
They'll play the full victim. Well, here's the thing about the. I mean, one of the key things that got me into MGTOW was a workplace situation where this one woman, accused me of a bunch of stuff, and I got put through the ringer over it. And the only reason I was able to sidestep the problem was because I was working in a department that had access to the cameras. And I
Mm.
was able to record, I was able to set up some interactions with her, or was able to record the interaction with a witness, which
Uh,
diffused the situation. But I mean, even with that, one of the women in HR like literally tried to get my coworkers to turn on me.
wow.
And it was like this was like 2010. So yeah, I mean, even an accusation. I mean, when it comes to workplace, and again, I've got a video on my channel called, actually two of them, about MGTOW at work. I mean, what effectively happens with me when I go to work, especially if I have to work around women, you know, the moment I step out, and I not just when I get to the workplace, like literally the moment I step out the door of my apartment to go to work, I am effectively a monk.
Yeah.
I limit my interaction with women to hello, goodbye, or straight up just work related stuff. Like there is no even hint I mean when I'm dealing with women I don't have to do it right now with my job right now, but when I have had that situation, right, I would, when I had to deal with women at work, I leave the door open, right? I try to meet with women in a public area where there's witnesses around, and it's like
Mm.
even if I know the woman, I will do this, right?
Interesting.
And it's like, because it's, like, I mean, I just don't want to take that chance. And there's a lot of men out there that are like that now, and there's women like going, well, that is just ridiculous and stupid. And it's sort of like, yeah, well, tell that to Tim Hunt, or
Yeah.
tell that to the poor guy who got reamed out over a shirt, which by the way was designed and given to him as a gift by a woman.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right. That was his female friend who did the shirt for him, because she is, I guess, into all that anime manga type stuff, and yeah, it was a woman that designed that T-shirt for him.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, yeah. So I mean, it's like this is so yeah. You've got false accusations. You've got corrupt courts. You've got, and of course, it's like, I mean, just on an everyday level, right? I
mm,
mean, for your average guy, it's like it's, unless you've got, and this is what I like. This is why I am not anti PUA or anti red pill. I think guys do need to learn a little bit of game.
I think
This is just me personally.
I actually think
I
you're
think that
100% right, because I think game will save you a lot of these sort of awkward situations. For me,
oh
when I see a lot of men who touch women in a very very awkward manner, or in a very very, I would consider to be like, if they had game, they would know not to do that. They would know how to approach a girl, and if they wanted to actually find out if the girl likes them, the game theory would teach them how to figure that out without being really weird and awkward, and touching women. I've heard stories. I don't know if you ever heard the story of Lawrence Krauss and how he touched.
the name rings a bell, but bring me up to speed.
Okay, Lawrence Krauss is a world-renowned physicist. He went around doing a tour with Richard Dawkins for a few years. This was back in the day, exactly the same sort of time as you were saying about Atheism Plus, which is with Matt Dillahunty and all those guys sort of came out with that Atheism Plus. I was around. I was watching the whole thing unfold during that period. Now, Lawrence Krauss is kind of, you could say, he came out of that atheism online sort of period where Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, and Lawrence Krauss all started to talk about, lack of God belief, or that you don't need God. Anyway, Lawrence Krauss, I can imagine his entire life he's a geek. He grew up as a geek. He's a Jewish geek, and he became a geek because he became a physicist. Female attention has not been a major issue, a major thing for him. He hasn't probably had much female attention, and he certainly doesn't have any game because of the way he behaves. So once he became a famous person through science, because scientists don't usually, unless you're an occasional Einstein or a Newton or a Mary Curie, one of those people are, you can count on one hand. So most scientists are not really going to ever be famous. They're not going to be pop star style famous. Lawrence Krauss suddenly fell into that. He fell into this almost pop star, rock star celebrity status amongst the atheist community. And there was a girl from, I don't know whether it's Ukraine or Poland. Anyway, she's from Eastern Europe, called Oh My God, It's Chris. It's Chris Rad is her full name. Extremely attractive blonde lady who did a whole bunch of atheist videos. And she met Lawrence Krauss at an event, after party kind of event, after one of their stand-up, one of their stage speeches. And Lawrence Krauss touched this girl on her thigh and her legs and stuff in an incredibly awkward way. I mean, she was describing it, and it wasn't creepy, but it was awkward, very awkward. And by the way, this woman is married. She is not interested in any man. So Lawrence was flirting with her.
I could say some stuff about married women, but continue.
Yeah, but I mean, she at least came across as saying, I'm not interested. But she was, of course, flattered because Lawrence is kind of her hero. But anyway, if he had some game theory, he would know how to make physical contact. He would know about kinesthetic theory and things like that to be able to make physical contact, but still keep it within the realms of sort of embarrassment. Keep it so that it doesn't become awkward or embarrassing. But he didn't know. Clearly, he didn't know, because it was like touching her thigh and stuff in a very cringy way. So, in all honesty, I think game theory and knowing about Kino, knowing about all these different ways of interacting and even making physical contact with women without it becoming weirdly awkward. Because you don't know whether this girl is into you in a sexual way or she's just happy to see you. And I think men can benefit from these things a lot. A lot of men, I found, have terrible ideas of how to interact with a woman. And they just don't know. They just have no skills. And I'll be honest, I was exactly in their position a good 15 years ago. Maybe about 15, 16 years ago now. I had no game. Most of my 20s, I had zero game. The only reason I got laid was because women came to me. I literally had no game. If a woman hadn't approached me and basically gave me a neon sign or an authorized letter from her lawyer saying you may have sex with me, I wouldn't have a clue that this woman was interested. I was terrible, and so was my brother.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. My in my day-to-day life, my personal view on doing approaches with women is that I don't do approaches with. I mean, you're familiar with the term IOI, indicators of interest.
Yes.
I don't do an approach with a woman unless I have IOIs that are 100% confirmed. I mean, I don't even take the chance. If it's just some sort of a hesitation or some sort of a mixed message on my part now, I don't even bother. I can't, I don't feel like having to go through the melodrama of like leaving a place or having the manager approach saying, "Will you harass this woman?" Which, by the way, has happened to me, and it's sort of like, what, because it just comes out of, because I thought this woman, like, I mean, I think it's actually on my content. If it's not, then I should post it up. The story that happened with an incident that happened on the bus, and this is a prime example of why a lot of guys are going MGTOW. This is back when I was still riding the bus. There was this one woman who was paying an inordinate amount of attention to me, right? And what the hell, right? So I started talking to her, and the moment I started talking to her, it was like Jekyll and Hyde. It was like, "Oh, well, leave me alone." Da, 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 da. And so I'm like, well, why were you giving me all this attention, right? And it's like, well, no, I wasn't doing it. So like, yeah, you were, right? She got off at this one stop, and the stop before me, and I was like looking at her, and she was on her cell phone, and she was like looking up at me the whole time. Now, I literally the next stop, I got off because it was the next stop was where there was a bunch of taxis. I literally got off at the next stop, got into a taxi cab, and I like literally took the taxi down to the next down a few stops, and then I got off and got back on the bus again. Oh, and I also changed my jacket.
Oh my God, that's excessive.
It turned out to be the smart move because I went from one train platform to the other by cab.
Yeah.
And literally, by the time the cab got to the next platform, while I was sitting there waiting for the bus to arrive again, cops showed up. Cop got on the bus.
Oh my!
Got on the bus that I had just. It started looking around for me,
Holy.
and then got off, and then I got back on, and it was like, whoa!
Wow, that's interesting.
This is why. So even if you get a lot of IOIs, right?
There's no guarantees.
Like, you just
and this is
no, and I mean.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I said this is why I like situational, or I'll try to use very, very. I don't know if you know about the different sort of POAs, but there's a guy called Sin who was an instructor with.
I heard of him,
for a long time, and he talks about different circles, hoops, effectively, like a small hoop, a big hoop, a medium, like a big hoop, a medium hoop, and a small hoop, and each hoop has its level of IOI, effectively. Now he uses it for. What's it called, to get a girl to invest in the situation, in the interaction. Now I actually sometimes even look at it in that hoop situation when it comes to openers. So I don't use an opener that is overly obvious.
I don't either.
It'll be something like, I'm sorry, I don't know this bus very, for example, your bus situation. I don't know, I don't catch buses very often. Does this bus go to, I don't know, whatever drive? Or does it pass X, Y, such and such mall? And depending on the sort of energy you get off the girl with the answer, then you'll know where you stand. And all you did was ask an innocent question. You didn't really do anything overly obvious as an opener. So that's what I would have done in that situation, or in most situations, especially in the streets. If it's a nightclub, it's different. Nightclubs, I'm much more aggressive.
Oh yeah, day game is different from night game. I very rarely have to practice game again, right? Because when I go out on my day-to-day business, and you can't really go much of anywhere right now where I live because everything's shut down. But I mean, I have a specific thing that I have to go and do, even if it's just, say, go into the cafes to just sit out and chill and have a cup of coffee and basically do a little bit of editing on my video, or just like chilling out and listening to music, right? That's my intent there. Now, when I'm there, if I get some IOIs, I will like follow through on them, but it's like I don't like, I mean, the standard, I mean, this is something that I think a lot of people in the PO, the standards, you just have to absolutely know that there's a green light before you move forward, because it's like, I mean, just one false accusation can like and this is again something that a lot of people just don't. This is the reason why a lot of men are going on a whim. Any woman, anytime, anywhere can literally turn a man's life upside down. I mean, there was a guy, I think it was 2018, bumped into a woman on the subway, and the woman charged him with sexual assault.
Wow, that is insane.
And this happened in London, and he didn't. I mean, the video clearly showed that he didn't do anything. But because this woman was actually somewhat famous, she was an actress on one of the TV shows on BBC and whatever.
Oh, I see.
The police like literally turned this guy's life upside down.
That's insane.
And there was no consequence for the woman for doing it, right? And all he did was just bump into her.
Bloody hell. Yeah, I mean,
You know,
I mean, it's true. You're right. It can. In a single event, you could go out in the morning, think you're just gonna have a regular day. You're gonna go, I don't know, to work, to shop, whatever, and next thing you know, you're in handcuffs.
yeah, you know, and one of the most common slogans in MGTOW is the best way to play is to not win. And if you're going to play, you have to change the rules in such a way that you have to be able to protect yourself, not just legally but physically, right? Because it's like you're not just you're potentially dealing with white knights and that sort of thing, and it's like and it's like and you take a look at everything we have just covered, and guys, not even necessarily going through it, are seeing all of this going on. And they're like looking at this thing called MGTOW, and it's sort of like, well, maybe it's not just maybe. It's like, yeah, it's just like the juice ain't worth the squeeze. Like, I mean, like fatherhood, being married basically puts you at the whim of the state. It's not even necessarily getting married is not even necessary, or being in a relationship is not even necessarily a guarantee of sex.
Oh no! In fact, there's less sex in most marriages than more. Sexual access actually is reduced after a few years of marriage because generally boredom sets in unless you're a guy who makes tremendous amount of effort to jazz things up and do things, which usually comes down to the guy. Woman's total effort in this is how I've noted the difference in effort of a man trying to get a woman sexually aroused versus a woman. A guy, I've literally done this, so I'm not talking about this as a theory. I have spent almost over a week preparing a single date, where I'm gonna go, what we're gonna do, what food we're gonna order, what champagne or drinks are gonna be available, when, how. Afterwards, we'll drive here, we do that, we do this. I planned an entire evening's event, and sometimes several hours worth of event, costing considerable amounts of money, to not to mention, and the woman's repayment, or at least like another time where she wants to jazz things up, she wears a pair of lingerie or wears stockings and suspenders for the night. That's the total sum of effort in comparison.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you're putting out a mile's worth of effort to get an inch's worth of payoff. Here's the thing, right? And I will sum this all up for you. So the whole dating courtship ritual, okay? Like, the guy has to do the pursuing. That's just basic. And the guy has to prove his worth. So, I mean, the guy has to go out and basically peacock himself and spend all of this excess time and energy putting out this image to attract the woman. Then, of course, he has to go through the song and dance to get her. And then he basically has to make sure that there's enough chemistry there to make it work. You settle down with her, you get married, you have kids, and then on a whim, it can all just be taken away from you. And oh, by the way, the whole concept of fatherhood and masculinity is being mocked in current modern media.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of.
So that. It's like you're like seeing all this happen, and it's like, you just take a look at this and like it's sort of like and.
Yeah, I mean,
slogan, best way to win is to not even play, right? Is to just go about your life doing as you do. And here's the ironic part about it: even though I don't go looking for it, I actually, for some strange reason, get more female attention now as a MGTOW than I ever did, even though I'm considerably older than I was when I discovered PUA than I was when I was doing PUA.
Well, the thing is, I think what I found is once you reach a certain level of mindset in which you are no longer hungry, you're no longer desperate, you don't have those hungry eyes of chasing women. And this is what married men sometimes have, those who are happily married, that is, where a lot of women like married men because a married man is is not particularly looking, especially the happily married one. My friend years ago said to me, I hardly ever got any attention from women until I put on a wedding ring. Now I can't. I'm beating them off, and I don't even understand it, because the times when I was really desperate for a woman and I was lonely and I didn't have a girlfriend, women didn't want to touch me with a barge pole. It's almost like they can smell it on you that you're single.
I mean, it's not that. Oh, by the way, I should just throw in a caveat here for any men or for a lot of men and MGTOW who are going to listen. This is not a guarantee that this will specifically happen to you. Each guy's experience in MGTOW is going to be unique and different to themselves. I mean, in my particular case, I went MGTOW. I suddenly started getting more female attention. Even though I'm not old, but I'm older than I was back in my PUA days. But I mean, again, right, the whole issue, and I mean, again, so you go through all of this routine to get the woman, and you're seeing masculinity, you're seeing fatherhood being mocked, and it's sort of like, a lot of guys are just simply men are just looking at that situation going like, well, what's in it for me? Like, I mean, what is the 4 essential things that you get from being in a relationship, or specifically from getting married? Companionship, sex, kids, and a home, right? At this point, all 4 of those can be replaced with technology. And the kids is still a little bit, you could still adopt if you want to. You can still be,
as a single man, I don't think as a single man,
family.
Yeah, but I don't think as a single man you'll be able to adopt. I don't think they let you.
No, I don't. Well, you might. There have been cases where that's happened.
Okay.
It's again, right. All 4. If that's really the direction you want to go in, but I mean, currently, all 4 of those things can either be replaced with technology or can be replaced. I mean, I can create my own home. I have family. I just don't have kids of my own. I have a group of friends and cohorts that I have a family. It's just not a family in the nuclear family kind of sense. If it comes to sex, well, for one, if I'm willing to play the game, I can get laid. I just simply, there's a, ironically enough, and we can get into this later. If you go into a bookstore and you type in, I don't know what it's called in Britain. I know in the United States it's called Indigo, in Canada it's called Chapter. But if you go into a bookstore and you type in male sexuality into a bookstore kiosk, and you look, like, there will be books on female sexuality, gay male sexuality, couple sexuality, but there's nothing on men's sexuality. Last time I checked.
Well, I mean, who goes into bookstores anymore with the internet? Everybody's just getting everything online. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't even see the function of a bookstore or a library anymore, unless you can't afford to have these facilities at home. If you can't afford to have the internet or a computer, then maybe libraries are still, useful. But I mean, physical books.
Libraries still have their uses. So I mean, all of those things can be replaced in some form or fashion. I mean, if artificial wounds come along, here and again, right? So like the guy is like looking at, again, I will go through the issues: corrupt courts, false accusations, domestic violence. Oh yeah, we haven't even covered domestic violence being committed by women.
Well,
we
exactly.
haven't even covered that.
I mean, it's almost 50-50. I mean, it's a little bit more for men. It's not quite 50-50, but it's like 51 or 52 versus like 45. Or actually, no. Maybe like 55-45, that sort of a ratio.
Yeah, it's and it's a different type of physical. I mean, some of it's physical, but a lot of it is like emotional and psychological.
Yeah.
And you got all of these issues. None of them are being addressed. In fact, not only are they not being addressed, but in a lot of cases, feminists and their allies are doing everything they can to get in the way of reformations.
Same as male suicide rates.
Friends around getting. Yeah, male suicide rate. So it's like, and you're seeing all of this happen either to you or to people who you know. I mean, I still have not met a single guy. Whenever I talk about this to a guy, like, I mean, I don't know of a single guy I've spoken to so far that doesn't know a guy that's going through a situation like this,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
either directly to them or somebody in their like either immediately in their social group or just one step removed.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. No, I
You
mean,
know, so
I've known plenty of guys who are either going through divorce or are divorced. I know a personal friend who absolutely got fleeced. The man was almost a millionaire. I don't think he was quite a millionaire, but certainly in the upper hundreds of thousands of pounds in his personal wealth, a house.
it would have been that would have
businesses.
made him a millionaire in the United States. But continue.
Yeah, but what I mean is in the UK, he was. I wouldn't say he was maybe 100, over the million mark, but he was very
He was
very.
financially independent.
Oh,
That would probably be
he
the
was
word.
very very well off. He got married to an incredibly attractive girl who was about 19, 20 years old, and he was in his like 40s. So he spent an absolute fortune to sort of win her over, if you like, and win her parents' approval in order to marry her. He married her, I think, about 15, 16 years now. Over that period, she absolutely fleeced him. He now lives in rented accommodation and pays a fortune for the house that his wife lives in with their daughter. But he can't live in the house, but he pays for the house, but he doesn't own the house. And
Yeah.
all his other businesses started falling apart and fledgling, and just his entire life. I mean, the man was like in shape. He was good looking. He was very popular with women. He owned a nightclub himself before he got married. He was incredibly popular with women. He was an eligible bachelor. And all of that, and I really admired him. I looked up to him when I was young, because I was like, I just want to be like this guy. This guy's got it all. And he went and just became besotted by this woman. I mean, some people, because in the Iranian community, a lot of people go, "Oh, he was bewitched." They used magic and potions, because he almost seemed like he was bewitched. He was he became obsessed with this girl and would do anything and everything to try to get this girl and marry this girl, and she ruined him. Absolutely ruined him, like beyond measure.
I will say one thing about. I mean, I've met some really hot Iranian women, and it's like, wow, whoa, yeah.
Oh, they're very attractive, but narcissistic as hell. Oh, the narcissism is unbelievable, and the vain and sort of superficial sort of things that they pay attention to. I mean, Iranian women. Not Iran is like second only to like Los Angeles when it comes to rhinoplasty, when it comes to nose jobs.
Oh, I can believe that. Yeah, I mean, by the and we're talking about MGTOW in the Middle East.
Yeah, let's touch
Probably
on
not
that
you, but some of the actually definitely not you, but some of the worst white knights and some of the most whipped men that I have ever encountered online
Yes.
and in person have come out of the Middle East.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They still because they still believe in those male chivalry sort of concepts. They still have that, but they are trying to now deal with that male chivalry kind of concepts in a 21st century feminist world, and so there is a massive disconnect, because the chivalry of the yesteryear that men had came with certain rewards, came with an obedient and a loving woman. Exactly. So women, would respond to chivalry with love and respect and devotion and commitment. Now they get the chivalry with these white knights, white knighting for them, but then they kick the white knight in the balls and kick him to the curb, because now they're feminists and women can do it for themselves because they're just fabulous.
Oh yeah, and I mean, and here's another thing about, finding the right woman. I mean, even if the right woman, she's I mean, I have met a couple of the right women, right? They they have friends around them, and this is something that happened to me in 2016. They have friends around them that will justify them treating the male like a disposable utility, and it's, I mean, so yeah, I mean, we've covered a lot of ground here, and maybe we didn't, because I mean we've been going back and forth between red pill and PUA and MGTOW here. I
Yes.
mean, ultimately, again, right? Because this is something that I'm going to specifically say out to any of the critics that want to listen to this, right? Any of the issues that I have brought up tonight or on this show, you are free to fact check me on. The corrupt courts, alimony, child support, false accusations, paternity fraud. You are free to check up any of that stuff. And then if you want to, you can contact me on my channel and you can try to sell the plantation to me. You can try to convince me that I should go back and that I should go back into playing that game again, and that I'm not risking everything that I have worked for a reward that is not, in all honesty, isn't really particularly all that good anymore for the male. And it's continuing to get worse. I mean, there was another case in Britain here that happened back in 2016 where a guy divorced his wife from 25, 30 years ago, and his wife got back support because he was poor when he married her back in the 80s. She took him to court for back support, even though they had agreed back then that there wasn't going to be any. It was just a verbal agreement, and the judge ruled in the woman's favor. Now, it wasn't a particularly large amount; it was just £100,000, right? But I mean,
I see.
Like, you can divorce a woman now, and you could become wealthy later, and she can still come back and nail you for past expenses. Or there's a situation in couple of situations in Canada that I will bring up. One happened very recently here where a guy in Toronto got involved with a woman with kids. They never lived together. He never made any financial commitments to her, but a judge in Toronto ordered him to pay child support anyway.
I've heard that in France as well. I've heard that in France, that if you've lived with someone, some guy lived with a woman, she got pregnant. The guy found out that the child wasn't even his, like years later, though. I don't think it was immediate. The French courts ordered him to carry on paying child support, even though it wasn't his child, because the child had now become accustomed to him being the father. That is, like, to me, like insanity on a level that I can't even begin to imagine.
Oh, and there's cases like that all the time. There's stuff like that happening all the time. It's sort of like any type of a relationship interaction with a female, and I hate having to say this about it now. Like, you have to look at it from it's potentially transactional, right? I mean, you could go out, and this is the reason why I don't do PUA unless I know the IOIs are like beyond 100% now. Because even if I sleep with a woman, she can just simply change her mind.
Oh, yeah.
And accuse you of it even years later.
Yeah.
And like the amount of safeguards that you have to put in place. By the way, this is another interesting book that maybe I should just send you all the links. It's written by a guy by the name of R.K. Hendrick, who is actually a guy. But it's called How to Avoid, in quotes, Getting Screwed When Getting Laid, which is basically a book. It's written by a lawyer in Oregon. But I mean, it's a book written specifically for men about how to protect themselves legally when interacting with women. And like, the rules in there are extensive.
All right.
Really, like, I mean, like, they're written. R.K. Hendrick wrote the book out in a form which makes it easy to read and easy to understand. But even, like, one of the like, you remember that PUA a couple of years ago who took a woman back to this friend's place and then kicked her out of the apartment after it was done, right? And just basically more effectively tossed her out onto the street, right? And this was a somewhat semi-famous PUA, and he got charged with rape.
Is that
even though
that's not Rouge V, was it? No.
No, that's not Rouge V. No, I can't remember who the hell it was. Even though she had consented to the sex, because of the way he treated her, she went and reported him to the police, and he got charged. And the people who were in that apartment with him all got charged with sexual assault.
Wow.
Right? And I mean, it was like, in the book, for instance, and this is something that, I mean, a lot of guys don't think about, but Chapter 1 of How to Get Laid Without Getting Screwed. Rule 10, after a one-night stand, always take her out to breakfast or coffee. Reason why you do that, they didn't follow that rule, right? One of the reasons you do that is that you have, if she goes out for coffee or breakfast with you afterwards, sort of like, oh, well, he violently raped you, but you went out for breakfast with him afterwards.
Exactly.
And you say, yeah, it's like, yeah. I'm going to have to, actually, maybe I'll look it up while we're busy having this conversation. But yeah, it's
look, Neroke. I don't want to hold you up because we're past our we're almost an hour and a half now, and I know you've got a busy day ahead of you. There was actually one question I wanted to ask, but maybe we can save that one. Maybe if you can remember it, and we'll have another chat.
I can answer it right now. I've got time.
I was just I wondered about social shaming and like people. I mean, from the community I come from, because it's Middle Eastern, it's still kind of traditional. Oh, are you? I get all the time asked, are you married yet? Have you found a nice girl to settle down with? That kind of social family type pressure that I get, at least from my end. What sort of social shaming do you get, and how do you deal with them so that others can maybe follow those tips?
Well, I know this is going to sound like a straightforward question. What I do with my life is my business, not theirs. That's the first thing I tell them. I don't. A lot of when I was growing up, a lot of what contributed to me going down the path I did happened to involve the actions of women in my life. Let's just say there's drug addiction, narcissistic personality disorder, emotional and psychological abuse, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, a lot of the issues that caused me to want to, and what happened with my brother, So, I mean, a lot of the issues, a lot of the stuff that, and by the way, a couple of women in my family actually threw, even though what happened to my brother was absolutely criminal, a couple of female members of my family still threw my brother under the bus despite what happened.
Oh, as in, sorry, did I miss? Is this a longer story that I missed?
open part where my brother, where my ex-sister-in-law put their two sons up for adoption.
Oh yes, that's right. That's right. Yes, yeah.
And the judge, when it went back to court to contest custody, the judge gave them back to my ex-sister-in-law anyway.
Oh my God!
Even though she tried to put them up for adoption, yeah. Members of my family, specifically my mom, threw my brother under the bus.
Oh my God! Really?
Yeah.
That is insane.
I was like, oh, well, your brother did this and this, and your brother was dishonest, and sort of like that sort of. And I was looking at my mom and going, sorry, that makes what happened to him okay, right? Like I was at. Here's the thing about that whole incident. We had to turn my two nephews over to my sister-in-law in the middle of a reunion.
Okay.
Now my brother is like a man's man. He's a quintessential tough guy. The only time I ever saw him cry was after he had to turn those kids over, because apparently there was one scene where they had to like literally pry one of the two sons off of my brother.
Yeah. That's one of those are the heart-wrenching situations.
So yeah, dealing with social ostracization, you know, well, first of all, I'm active online, so I get a lot of flack anyway. I personally don't. I wouldn't be if I wouldn't be making the content I was making and putting it out if I wasn't prepared to deal with a whole bunch of it. The If they want to have a discussion about it, they want to have a rational discussion about it, I will. Anybody who's dumb enough to throw insults at me, you know, it's first of all, you know, I dealt with a fair share of amount of abuse and teasing as a kid, but I mean, at this point I have had literally everything happen to me online that could possibly happen to me.
Yeah,
I've been doxxed, I've been threatened, I've been harassed. Yeah, I've had it all happen to me at one point in time or another. So I mean, it's sort of like putting up with the slings and arrows is just, I mean, it's a price that I'm willing to pay in order to make sure that men have access to the resources. And again, like I sent you one book on it. I could probably look up Men on Strike, probably send you a couple of other links on your Twitter account.
Yeah, if you send it to me, then I'll include it in the description of this video as well. And I've already put your for the people who are listening, I'll put Neroke's YouTube channel in the description of this video, and I'll add your Twitter as well, so people can follow you on Twitter. But yeah, I mean, I was thinking, for me anyway, it's not so much an aggressive form of social shaming. It's actually the subtle forms of social shaming, which I find a little bit more awkward actually to deal with sometimes than the more aggressive. If someone comes at me and says to me, like women quite often do, of a guy they don't like, or there's someone they're fighting with, oh, you short dick, I bet you can't get laid, I bet you haven't been laid in years, you can't ever get a woman, you know what I mean, those sort of stuff. Those are easily
that stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, those sort of stuff, I'll be honest, are easily dismissed because someone's angry and they're just gonna call you a short dick, no girlfriend having, I don't know, incel. I don't mind. I mean, that's easy. That's, you know, water off a duck's back. But the ones that I find more awkward is when your mum or your mum's friends, or you're at some sort of house party and they turn around and go, so are you married yet? Do you have any kids? Why aren't you married? You're a nice boy. And by the way, they do this to women as well. It's not just men. But you know, you're a nice boy. Why don't you find a nice girl and settle down with? Why are you such a commitment? There's the other day, one of my friends who's a female, she said to me, oh, why are you such a commitment phobe? And I'm like, I'm not a commitment phobe. I just see this game as rigged. I don't want to go into a casino where the dice are loaded and the roulette table has a magnet under it. I just don't want to get cheated out of my hard-earned life and finances and resources that I took years to build. So I'm sorry, it's not commitment phobia. It's a rigged game, and I'm not playing anymore.
No, yeah, well, I mean, again, right? It's like, I mean, the critics of MGTOW, I mean, I've had to deal with all of those. First of all, there's a WordPress article, the catalog of anti-male shaming tactics, which actually covers virtually all of these. Sexual history is not relevant to the situation because most of what we've talked about tonight doesn't even necessarily involve sex. Being angry about the situation and understanding what's going on, the injustice is actually somewhat justifiable under the circumstances. No, you're not being afraid because you don't want to go and enter an arena where the game is rigged and where the odds are stacked against you, and expect that somehow you're going to be the exception to the rule.
Exactly.
You know, there's, you know, as opposed to being selfish. Yeah, I mean, looking out for your self-interest and wanting something for yourself and not having some woman randomly just take it away from you on a whim. is a very selfish move, and I don't make any apologies for that. I mean, like, yeah, there's like a whole. I'll have to find it for you, and I'll post it up in the. I'll send it to you here. It's called the Catalog of Anti-Male Shaming Tactics.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
that's
did
awesome.
a. Continue.
Oh, sorry, you broke up. What was that?
I was going to say I'm actually going to find. I'm actually going to find that article, and I'll post it up in the chat bar for you.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, yeah. I mean, as I said, I just don't want to take up too much of your day. I know this is a fascinating. This has been a really, really fascinating conversation. Let's put a pin in this for you, and so you can get on with the rest of your day. And also, it's getting kind of late in Britain as well. And let's do another one of these. Maybe next time on your channel, or you know, one
Well,
of your famous
I have
hangouts.
yeah, I have a rotating chair on my channel. I have people coming in and doing comments. All like it's an open chair, and then we talk about on the Red Pill Nation. We talk about the hangout. We talk about the most recent about events that are taking place right now. Most of it, and this shouldn't come as a big surprise, involves the U.S. election right now.
Of course, yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff around Johnny Depp, but yeah, there's no shortage of stuff going on. I sent you a bunch of links to some relevant information if somebody wants to take a look for the gay men
Awesome.
listening to this.
Whereabouts did you post it? Sorry,
It's in the private chat.
Yes, I can see them now. Yes, awesome,
Okay,
awesome.
for the men involved in this, and this is something that I think I probably should have said at the beginning. What is happening to you, be it a false accusation or you're being like dragged through the mill via divorce, or your ex is using your kids as a weapon, or you've been sperm jacked or something like that, there are resources out there. You have to be willing to put your ego aside and ignore what the mainstream media has been telling you about the manosphere, and understand that you do have legal options and places to go to ask questions, be it on Facebook or at A Voice for Men or the National Coalition for Men, or I believe there's a British organization that takes care of this as well.
Yes.
You have to be willing to put your ego aside and ask questions, and be willing to keep asking questions, because like, I mean, even this friend of yours, for instance, that got fleeced over by his ex. I mean, I'm sure if he started asking around and started asking questions, I'm sure there are some legal options that he probably didn't know about, and he probably picked the wrong lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, this sort of systematic fleecing, it really occurred over a period of like 10, 15 years. This wasn't a single event. It wasn't just the divorce. This is now he's at the end of that road and he's on the divorce level. So now this is the final sort of picking of his corpse, basically. She didn't do this over a period of a single sort of short period of time. This happened over a number of years, and so most of the stuff, I think he's never going to get back. It's all done and dusted.
Just have your friend go over to Men's Rights UK. Just have him Google that, or have him contact a National Coalition for Men, or I can't do it on A Voice for Men anymore because they're getting constantly harassed. But I mean, ask questions. You know, he probably has some legal options that he probably wasn't aware of.
Yeah, that's the thing. You see, the weird thing as well, what I find is it's also kind of a weird, awkward conversation to start, and that's sometimes a difficult thing, because it can be
it's embarrassing, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you got taken. You were this powerful, effectively alpha male, and now you've been humbled beyond. Oh, not just humbled, but humiliated. And you know, even in Western society, it's like it's still not considered a good idea to be admitting weakness.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean,
So I mean, it's like,
and by the way, he's an Iranian, so he's even more uber macho about all that stuff than even an average Englishman who would be maybe a bit more susceptible to like admitting, okay, I've been humbled, I've been, this has happened to me, and I have to like seek help. Iranian men seem, they are even worse when it comes to their sort of, I guess I don't want to even say the words, but their masculinity, their sort of ideas of masculinity, and they should just suck it up and deal with it, kind of thing.
This whole notion does have to be turned on its head and re-examined. Like, the males are going to have to start to re-examine what their role is in society. And it's like, there are historical examples. There is one major historical example of what happens to a society when men choose to withdraw their services, which we don't have time to get into right now because I mean, I have to get going here.
I know.
But don't be afraid to ask questions. Go online, start looking up for information. No, I mean, you might not necessarily get the right answer the first time around, but just keep asking questions, and you will eventually find some people who are willing to listen, and that will tell you where to go and what to do legally. It's not necessarily it's not gonna mean that your situation is going to quote unquote end.
That's true.
But I mean, it will make things, and this is something that I have to deal with quite frequently with a lot of men that I know. It does make it legally tolerable, and there's a lot of stuff we could cover on that, but we haven't got time tonight.
Sure, no problem. Look, it's been awesome. Thank you for coming. Let's put a pin in it on that note. But there is a lot of useful information out there for any young men or men who are going through divorces. And I'm going to post all your links in the description of this this video. Also, guys, if you're out there listening, Neroke5's channel is also YouTube channel is also in the description. Go over, like and subscribe, and listen to some of the podcasts, and I hope that we can this could be a start of an interesting relationship where we can have back and forth podcasts together and discuss these matters.
Oh yeah, you can. I'd say we start. Unfortunately, we start at usually at 9:30 at night for the Red Pill Nation hangout. So you probably have to get up very early in the morning to participate in it.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, you're more than welcome to jump on. Thanks very much. This was a very interesting conversation. Hope to pick it up again sometime. Would like to keep it going, but I have got other things to do today. So in your case, have a good night.
Yes, thank you so much for coming. Have yourself a wonderful night, and happy New Year again. And yeah, let's do it again pretty soon. We'll arrange it so that maybe it's at the weekends might be better for me because of the time difference. So I might be able to get up either early or stay up late, whichever way it works out. But don't worry, we'll have this conversation, or we'll continue the conversation in the future.
Yeah, like I say, Red Pill Nation, we got open chairs all the time. All right, thanks a lot.
Fantastic.
Have a good night, everybody.
Take care.
Talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. Okay. Hello. Okay, boys and girls. Thank you for coming. I hope this has been somewhat interesting and informative. I'm not entirely sure. My audience is a bit of a mixed bag, so some people will like this, some people will detest this. I would imagine, I would wager a lot of the female participants may not approve, but unfortunately these are some of the realities of what men deal with in life, and I don't want to shy away from these sort of tougher subjects and tougher conversations, because although I never got to say to Neroke, for me MGTOW is a reaction to the society in which men find themselves. The modern 21st century Western man, even the Japanese man, even the Korean man. This isn't a unique Western thing, by the way. This is now, as Neroke pointed out, this is happening in Egypt. This is been happening for a long time in Japan, in Korea or South Korea. and now it seems to have permeated in the Middle East. So men are dealing with the world in which they find themselves, and MGTOW is just a coping mechanism of the world that they find themselves in. It's a solution to the world that they're in, and unfortunately, in an increasingly gynocentric world, especially the Western world, men are not going to participate in this. Men are going to pull away. They're not going to just continue being women's ATMs. I'm sorry for the women out there, for those OnlyFans accounts, for those thoughts on Twitch, for those thoughts on YouTube even. The men are not going to continue being your ATMs. That's not how it's going to go down. They will eventually stop. So if you think you can build a career on a bunch of simps on Twitch and have them fund your life, well, we are going to come out there and we're going to tell those young men and those young simps that your titties are not worth the squeeze. The squeeze is not worth the juice. So no matter how much you stick your cleavage out there, we are gonna at least let those men know that they shouldn't be funding some airheaded thought on Twitch sticking her cleavage out pretending to play games. And I encourage that. I encourage that in every young boy who's currently funding some blonde-haired bimbo on OnlyFans and putting his own hard-earned cash into her coffers to go and buy herself cars and jewelry and Louis Vuitton bags. That's just my thoughts on this. I will not encourage young men to be funding these effectively online strippers, which is what they are really. So that's my take on it. And I know I'm going to put it again as a caveat. Not all women are like this. There is a lot of great women out there, but not all women are like this. But we are seeing a trend in our society. This trend of women using men purely as disposable, cash dispensers. And I think we have to tell men to stop doing that. It's a supply and demand economy, and unfortunately the supply will keep coming. The supply of thoughts will keep coming as long as there's demand from simps. And for me, I just want to unsimp men, as many as possible. Let us get men to be men again, because as the adage goes, as the saying goes, bad times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create bad times. And I would like our men to be strong again. And I think they're not. When we put them in dresses, I don't somehow see strong men in Western civilization. And I hope we can reverse this particular tide. Anyway, my rant is over. I bid you all a very, very good evening. I hope you enjoyed everything. And let's do it again soon. Hopefully, maybe I'll be on Neroke5's channel next time. I'll keep you guys posted, see how that unfolds. But in the meanwhile, thank you. Look after yourselves. We're in another major lockdown, so take care of your elderly family members. Take care of all your family members. Love and hug them, and tickle your ass with a feather. Peace.